Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek with Figured Out Baseball. Got a great Figured Out Baseball podcast for you today. I'm excited to talk with Aaron.Swick today. He's the head coach at Willamette University, an NCAA Division III program in Salem, Oregon. Before we get into questions with Coach Swick, I'll go through his bio so you know a little bit more about him, where he's come from, and things that he's done. It's kind of a pretty cool background to me. He's a Westminster, California native. He played collegiately at Saddleback College, a junior college in California. He was there in the springs of 2001 and 2002. He was an all-conference player at Saddleback College before he finished his playing career at Cal. He graduated from Cal in 2005, but not before having Tommy John surgery in 2004. In 2005, his senior year, though, he finished up strong, had a 1.86 ERA as a senior at Cal. When he finished his playing career, jumped into the coaching ranks in the springs of 2006 and 7. He was the pitching coach at Willamette, where he's now the head coach. In 2008, he spent one season as the pitching coach at South Dakota State, Division I school, obviously in South Dakota. And then in September 2008, he was hired as the head coach at Willamette. He's going into his 13th season in the spring of 21. We're in the fall of 2020 right now, still kind of in the period where COVID is affecting a lot of things, but it looks like Willamette is going to proceed with everything as usual this fall. So, again, this will be his 13th year there. In 10 of his first 12 seasons at Willamette, the team has had a winning record. He's got 242 total wins as a head coach in college. In his time there, he's had 3 All-Americans, 11 All-Region players, 18 first-team All-Conference players, 2 Conference Players of the Year. It is worth noting that during his time at Willamette, early in his head coaching career in 2009, he got his master's degree from South Dakota State. In 2018, one of a recent highlight for you, the team finished 31-19. That was tied for the school record in wins. The team won the conference tournament that year. They finished second in the regional tournament. They finished with a final end-of-season ranking as the number 18 ranked team in all of Division III baseball. Coach Swick was named the West Region Coach of the Year in that 2018 season. So, Coach Swick, I really appreciate you spending some time with us on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Well, I usually like to start with something that stands out from the bio to me. It's pretty rare, in my opinion, to find someone who sticks with and spends so much time at one school. A lot of coaches are, for one reason or another, jumping around a lot. I was that way, and for me it happened because either I wanted more responsibility or needed to make some more money or whatever it was. You know, for you, you've been around a lot as your summer collegiate coaching career has taken you a lot of different places. But as far as just your college coaching experience, you've spent of your 16 season, this will be your 16th season coaching. You've spent all but one season at Willamette. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit, just the loyalty that you've shown there and staying in one place for that long, which not a lot of people do, it seems like, in college sports?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I got my start in coaching because an assistant we had at Cal became the head coach at Willamette. So I was very lucky where I knew somebody that was in the college ranks already. I knew once I had surgery, I knew I wasn't going to be able to play professionally. I wanted to get into coaching, and so I was fortunate enough to get that opportunity. And, everyone, when they get into coaching, everyone has aspirations of different things. So goals sometimes, jump right to, hey, I want to be the Division I assistant, I want to be a Division I head coach, because you don't really know any better based on my experience as a Division I player. I thought, that's the place I wanted to be. But after being at Willamette for a couple of years and then going away, the time that I had here early on in my career, I was just very thankful. So lucky enough to be a head coach at 26. I know that's not very, very common these days. And, when you get into it, you're trying to build something of your own. And the first several years, I had no idea what I was doing. It was kind of learning on the job. And, then I met my wife, and we started having children and started becoming ingrained in the community. And over the course of time, you just start getting a little bit better at your craft and finding the right people and hiring the right assistants. And, you get to a point where you feel like you've got some momentum and you're doing something great. And so a combination of, we've got great people in our program. I'm very fortunate that we've got great staff. Our players are great people. Salem's a great community. It's very family friendly, and just feel like this is the best place for me and my wife and our family. And just very fortunate that Willamette is a great university with rich athletic tradition and fantastic facilities. And there's no place I'd rather be at the moment.
Especially as a former Division I player, and someone who, had a brief experience as a Division I coach. I mean, you played at Cal. I mean, of all places, it's not like you coached at, or you played at a small little Division I like I did. You were at Cal, and most people, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of people who are at that level have aspirations of being there. Obviously, you said this is a good fit for your wife, for you, for your family right now. This is a good place for you to be at Willamette. But when you first started out, can you talk about just your goals there? I'm assuming that you went from Willamette to South Dakota State to pursue that. Did you have a point in there somewhere where you kind of realized that maybe the grass isn't always greener, maybe it is the best thing to stay at a place where, I guess, a place like Willamette that's got all the things that they've got to hire someone like you? Did you have a certain time in there where you sort of realized that this is the right place for me? I don't want to be the one that's kind of pursuing that Division I dream like a lot of coaches do.
Well, I think you know what you know, right? And so once I got hired as the head coach here, and you start going out on the recruiting trail, and you start making friends that are other places, you see their paths, not that it's necessarily right or wrong, but you just start hearing about maybe some challenges that are other places, right? Some institutions might look the same, but once you get into kind of the inner workings of what their resources are, or the support, maybe it's not the best setup. And so, just like I said earlier, blessed where Willamette's a great school. Academically, it's got a rich tradition. Athletically, it's got a rich tradition. My boss lets me do my thing, and the players really challenge us. So when you're working with high academic students, you've got to be on top of your game. You can't just start giving them lingo that doesn't make sense. And so I think I really was drawn and attracted to the Division III model and the student-athlete balance. And working with young players who are driven athletically to be as good as they can be. Like, we've had players both historically and on the program now that want to play professionally, but they recognize that this is part of that equation. It's not the only thing. And so I just really like the balance that happens at the Division III level, and the ability for our guys to be well-rounded young men when they graduate, and for me to play a small part in that equation.
Is it typical for Division III schools to be high academically? Is that something that you see kind of across the board at the Division III school?
Yeah, I would say we are pretty much we are very geographically isolated. Most of the Division III universities in the country are east of the Mississippi River, so it's basically in the West region. It's our conference, the conference in LA, and then 2 conferences in Texas, and that's it. And so all of the schools that are in those 4 areas, I would say, are academic. Once you go east of the Mississippi, you have different levels based on different schools. So you have the SUNY system, and once again, I'm not familiar with all of the inner workings of those schools, so I'm not saying they're not good academics, but you have the SUNY system, which is state schools. You have the Wisconsin system, which is state schools. You have a number of high academic schools on the East Coast, like the NESCAC. So I just like on the West Coast, at least, the academic schools, the Division III schools are academic, and so I just like that balance that the players have.
Let's talk about that level athletically a little bit, because I know I think that Division III gets an unfair people have an unfair view of what Division III athletics are about. I think that there's a general thought process that, well, if I can't play anywhere else, I can play at the Division III level, or that anybody that wants to play, regardless of your athletic ability, can find a spot on a Division III team somewhere. I think that the level of competition at Division III gets very much overlooked sometimes, particularly, and I think this is the case for every level, when kids haven't seen that level. They either think that the level's not as good as it actually is, or they think that they're more talented. Maybe they can fit in with a higher level than they really can. And a lot of times, a guy, whether it's going to watch a team like Cal, or going to watch Division III school like Willamette, I think sometimes players high school players or younger don't realize how good these levels actually are. Can we talk a little bit about that? Can you just kind of give us an idea as much as you can in a podcast like this, just what the talent level is for your team, for your conference, like what you're seeing from players to try to give people a little better idea of Division III baseball?
Yeah, good. I would say that when I first got hired at Willamette, so I finished coaching immediately. When I finished playing and I started coaching, I was kind of struck by the difference in the level. And over the course of the last 15 years being around, that level, that talent gap has significantly shrinked, I would say. In the West region, we are blessed with a heavy population, right? California is, 1 in every 5 people in the United States live in California, so we are just blessed where there's tons of great baseball players in the region, and just over time, the level of player that we are getting, the level of players in our conference, Division III baseball as a whole, has gone significantly better. So if you're familiar with the draft, there was a third rounder this year at a Division III school. In our conference, we had a sixth rounder a couple of years ago. And so in our conference, we've had players drafted almost every year. And so that just, it goes to show that there's, talented players, there's good programs that help develop. Not necessarily, baseball is a great sport where, your size doesn't necessarily determine your ability on the field, but it can be an indicator in terms of what coaches are looking for. On our current roster for the coming year, we'll have 15 guys on our team that are 6'2" or bigger. So we are recruiting physical people that can do some things, that can drive the ball out of the yard, that are mid to upper 80s on the mound. And so, just the funnel has just gotten much more selective, and really excited that the kids are coming back to school because we've got a ton of talented players, and look forward to working with them.
Did you just say that you have high school recruits that are mid to upper 80s coming in?
Yes, sir. Right.
Right. I think that would really strike most people as just shocking that happens at your level, and I think that's good. I mean, it's good to educate people and let them see, because the reason I want to even talk about this, Coach Swick, is because I hope that there are players listening to these podcasts and parents who are in the recruiting process, maybe even before the recruiting process, that are just trying to learn. They want to hear some things from some actual coaches' mouths and just try to learn and be more educated. And, so often high school kids are D1 or bust. Like they'd rather be one of 60 guys showing up to fall practice at a Division I, hoping to be one of the final 35, then go somewhere where they're going to be valued and somewhere where they're going to get playing time and somewhere that they can develop. But it's just, I think it would really shock people to know that you have that sort of high school talent coming in. Can you talk a little bit about guys that are actually on the team? And I think it's easier to talk about pitching because you could talk about size or velocity or whatever it is. Can you kind of talk about maybe your top couple guys in your starting rotation, just what that looks like on your team and what it may look like for some of the better teams in your conference on a weekend? Like, what are you typically seeing, or what are you throwing out there?
Yeah, I would say for the coming year, our best 3 guys in terms of ability, our mid to upper 80s, they're 6'4", 6'2", and 6 foot tall. The third guy is a two-way guy that plays another position. What we do is a little bit different. We don't really determine roles before they get to campus. We use kind of an objective point system that we've created to make those evaluations. But from physical ability, not all those guys show up here like that. So I think it's a combination of recruit kids that really like to work, right? That are baseball rats and like to get after it. And we've had a fairly successful pitching development program. So once you get to campus, there's some growth within that. But I think, there's staffs across the country at the Division III level that are made up of different types of players. So, we've got some guys that have some velo. I don't think that's necessarily the best indicator for success. We want to be able to change speeds, right, disrupt timing, throw secondary pitches and plus counts. But the conference as a whole, the pitching has gotten better, I would say, and the Division III level as a whole has gotten better. And so, once again, as the Major League Baseball fastball has improved, right, then the college fastball has improved, and now the high school fastball has improved. So just people need to make sure that they recognize that those numbers are increasing at all the levels. There's a trickle-down effect, and that means that there are certain things that college coaches are looking for in the recruiting process.
When kids graduate from your program, what's kind of, if they ever have conversations with you, just kind of talk about their experience, what do they talk about? I mean, what are some of the things that guys that graduate from Willamette, what are they getting from talking about strictly about the baseball side of things? And again, I'm asking this just for, I think it's so important for a young baseball player to understand what's most important when they're picking a school, right? There's a lot more to it than I think what everybody wants to pick is everybody wants to put the biggest name possible across their chest. Everybody wants to put the hashtag blessed, and they want people to recognize the name of the school that they're writing. But usually when guys graduate, that's not even on the radar as far as what was most important as to whether or not you enjoyed your experience. Now, what the guys that graduate from your program, or even maybe they come back a couple years later, what are they reminiscing about? What are the most important things? Like, what are the experiences they're gaining from your program that stick with them the most?
Yeah, I think, the most important piece in the recruiting process is to find the best fit, right? And that's a phrase that's been used a lot, I would say, over the last couple of years. I'm sure other coaches are using it. Make sure you're looking for the school that meets all the criteria that you're looking for. And then I think it's important to ask challenging, educated questions of the coaches, right? Because the coaches and the players are going to be the people that you're going to be surrounded by, and they're going to be your support, or they're going to be the people that challenge you. And so getting to know those people, I think, is the most important part. And so one of the things that I'm really blessed with is we just got outstanding young men in our program. They are baseball rats that are good students that make good choices, and they genuinely have a great time together. And so I think the thing that really sticks out amongst them is just that camaraderie. We really preach the sense of family and community in our program. Everything is very inclusive. Like, I do not believe in a hierarchical system where the seniors are in charge and the freshmen are doing what they say. We believe in a point system to evaluate the players, so it really kind of enhances the competition of the guys. And at the end of the day, I think, I can't say it 100%, but I think almost all of them say, hey, I maximize my college experience. We got a chance to compete and do something that I love and be around great people while I'm doing so.
A couple things there that you mentioned I'd like to expand on a little bit. The first is you've mentioned a couple of times now the kind of player that you want on your team. You like guys that are baseball rats, that are hard workers, and guys that are going to come in and work to get better, who are also good academically, obviously, because of the academic standards there. When you're recruiting high school players, how do you find out how hard of workers these guys are? Because I've got to believe that every high school player thinks that he works hard. Typically this is the same at every level. A guy thinks he works hard until he gets to college and then really realizes there's another level that he can take his work ethic up. But how do you find out how hard a guy works in high school? Because I'm sure that a lot of high school coaches out there as well, they might think a guy works hard, or maybe someone works hard because they're really good, and when they get to college, like things, as they struggle, they might back off a little bit. How do you just get to the bottom of really what the character is of the player that you're about to recruit?
Yeah, I think you do your homework, right? You call the coaches, you get some references, you ask them questions about, what time do they show up? What type of teammate are they? What are those intangibles that they're going to bring to your program? And, you try and take it with a grain of salt. But for the most part, high school and club coaches are telling you positive things about the individuals. So, we try and build relationships with the coaches and create a track record with maybe some travel teams or organizations that know kind of the caliber that we're looking for. We really try and recruit the person first, and so once we identify that they're a good student and that we like their ability based on any film or evaluations we've made, we try and dig in a little bit and say, is this person going to match the type of personalities that we have in our program? And then, from time to time, like in a normal year when they come to visit, it's just as much our players evaluating the recruit as it is the recruit evaluating the school and the players, and so we don't make offers to kids until, I get the stamp of okay from the guys in the program, like, hey, yeah, we hung out with Johnny, for example, good guy, fit in really well, and good conversation. Like, does that person mesh well with the group the next year? And I think that's an important piece, is that you want to have consistency in terms of the person that you're recruiting. And it's really paid off over the last, let's say, 3 or 4 years, where we've got close to a 90% retention rate in our program. So, very blessed that we've got good people that have created that foundation. Like the seniors that graduated for us in 2018, where we won the conference championship. That group really changed the culture of our program. And so, from that particular year on, it's just stayed consistent with the people that are here and what those expectations are. And, we've just been very fortunate that when the coaches give us those recommendations, they come to fruition once they get to campus, and they just hit the ground running.
What are some things that you can hear during the recruiting process that will cause you to stop recruiting a guy? You're asking these questions to try to get to the bottom of the character. You're trying to, talk to people that maybe you know. Sometimes I'm sure you have to talk to coaches that you don't have any familiarity with. But what are things that you hear that maybe even you have to dig for a little bit and ask some extra questions to kind of get to the bottom of this or that? But what are things you hear when recruiting a guy that will basically make you say, he's not for us?
Well, once again, if you have the right relationships and the high school coaches are honest with you, the language that they use is very filtered sometimes. So you just have to pick through some of the things that they say. If a kid really likes baseball but he doesn't love it, that's probably a separator for us. Division III model where, we have less time with our players in the off season requires a kind of intrinsically motivated guy. So, the difference between like and love is a significant time difference in the off season, right? And how that player develops, and does that fit in with our culture? And so that's probably one of the pieces. A secondary piece is, and there's nothing wrong with this, so I don't want to discourage players from chasing their dream, but if a player thinks they're going to play at Cal and they're really not, they're really more of a Division II or Division III type player, and they're willing to chase that dream, for us, we're probably going to maybe move on to somebody else because we want to identify players that are looking for this type of experience and think that this is the best type of school or level of school that fits for them, and then give them the information and let them make an educated choice, as opposed to trying to convince somebody that they're not a Division I guy and that they're chasing that dream. I think it just makes more sense for us on the time piece to move in a different direction once we hear those things.
Yeah, on that end of things, you want kids that are going to be committed from day one, and not guys that are kind of like what if, and maybe thinking about transferring, because I'm sure that it will happen that, say, a guy wants to go to Cal but ends up going to a Division III because that's the school that pursued him the hardest, and he has a great freshman year. I'm sure there are thoughts of, should I transfer to a junior college and try to move up? And, obviously to run the best program you can, I'm sure you want to try to have guys for as long as you can in your program and not have that, a lot of turnover from year to year.
Yeah, and I learned by experience. So the first few years as a head coach, I had a few of those guys that ended up going that what you just talked about, and just say some reflection. What could we have done differently in the recruiting process? What could we have done differently when they got here in order to kind of adjust the person and the system so that the guys stay here, right? And so we've got plenty of guys on our roster that were recruited by Division I schools or that were communicated with by Division I schools. And to your point earlier, it's, hey, most players are going to stop playing baseball at the end of college. What do you want to say when you're done? Do you want to say that you were somebody that got a chance to be on the field and compete and maximize your experience? Or, to your point earlier, do you want to say, hey, I was at this particular place and I recognize that name, but I didn't play? And I share my testimonial with recruits in that sense where, the last year of college when I came back from surgery, I pitched 8 innings in 56 games. So it was not, although I had a great experience and I wouldn't have traded it for the world, in hindsight, maybe that was not the best route for me to go, right? Maybe going someplace where I got a chance to be on the field a little bit more, would have maybe had a more successful or comprehensive baseball experience. And so I just share, my testimonial with the guys and say, what would you prefer? Would you want to be somebody that doesn't play very much until your senior year? Or would you prefer to be kind of a big fish in a little pond and get those opportunities and learn some things about you and learn some things from the game of baseball because of the success and the trials that you're going through?
And it's something I'm sure a lot of kids wrestle with, and I don't think this is a new experience. I'm sure people always have, but you can look back at your experience, and mine wasn't that dissimilar to yours outside of Tommy John. But, do you go somewhere where do you try to pursue the highest possible level, even if you're going to be one of the lowest people on the roster, on the depth charts? Or do you go down a level or two? I often think back, I went to a small Division I, and I often think back that, like, I mean, heck, I probably could have been like a Division III All-American if I had gone that route, and probably could have been a pretty decent Division II player. And instead, the Division I experience was what it was. Now it led to me having a good coaching career, and kind of the same with you. Had you gone somewhere else, you probably, I mean, if you wanted to coach, you probably would have ended up in coaching somewhere, but you might not be where you are. So obviously the experience at Cal worked out for you. But as far as the actual experience when you're on campus, I think about that a lot. What the best experience would have been for me, and I, kids that I am in contact with now as an associate scout, and just having some ties to people in the area. I talk a lot about, what's most important for you, and if you're somebody who wants to be on the field, then you need to go somewhere, whatever level, whatever school is pursuing you the most and is offering you the most, especially at levels that are offering scholarship. The more scholarship they offer you, probably the more they expect you to play. If somebody's asking you to walk on somewhere at a level that does offer scholarships, they're probably not expecting a lot from you. And I think it helps to go watch the level of baseball that you're about to go to and just kind of try to get a real idea of where you fit in on that field. Is that something you do with recruits? Do you try to encourage them to watch? Just say they're trying to pick between you and a school at a different level. Do you try to get them to come out and watch your team to say, like, I mean, we're really pretty good. Like, if you come and watch us, I think you're going to be impressed with the level of baseball that you see.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case because, our roster is made up of players that aren't from the Northwest for the most part. So we have kids from California, kids from Texas, kids from Colorado. The kids from Colorado, there's only Division II, Division I baseball and junior college there. They don't have any idea what Division III looks like. So, yeah, there's an education piece that you have to fill in. And that's totally fine. And they're usually pleasantly surprised by what that looks like. And I agree with you. I think it's a combination of can I put my ego aside and find the best place that's going to give me the opportunity to do what I want, which is go to college, have a great experience, grow into an adult and a man, and have some experiences while also getting a chance to play the sport that I love. And I think people take for granted how much playing time affects your college experience. So I think there's two trains of thought when it comes to the college search process, right? I've heard a lot of times, go someplace where if you were to get hurt or you decided that you didn't want to play anymore, you'd be happy at that school. And I think that there's some merit to that perspective. But I think the flip side of it, which I tell families all the time, is there's a direct correlation between how much you play and your enjoyment in your experience and how that carries over into your social life and the dynamic with your teammates and your friends and your ability to be motivated to go to class. And so those things are all interconnected. And so if you choose a program where you're not valued or there's not competition and you don't get a chance to play, sometimes it creates a negative college experience, right? And so not that my guys have perfect experiences. I'm not pledging that by any means, but I think they feel satisfied that they get a chance to compete. They feel satisfied that, we are successful in the field, they're successful individuals, and when they graduate, they can say, hey, I did everything I could to maximize my baseball experience.
100% agree with that. I'm going to talk about something else you brought up a little bit ago, and that you mentioned a couple of times, that you guys use a point system to evaluate players. You don't necessarily have preset ideas of, okay, this guy's going to come in and be our shortstop, this guy's going to come in and probably be a back end of the bullpen type guy. And that's what it sounds like. You have a point system to evaluate your players once they're on campus and basically let them earn positions. Do you mind talking about that a little bit? Just kind of sharing how you run that?
Sure. So I stole that from a gentleman by the name of Rock Murray, who was the head coach at Rockwell High School in Sacramento for a long time. We had a player on our team who was from that high school. And once he got to campus, we just started having dialogue about, what his experience was. And then the next summer, I was at a recruiting event down in San Diego. I'll never forget this. And I was in the dugout with the players, and a player from Rockland High School hit a line drive and, advanced the runners over, and comes back to the dugout. I was like, hey, that was a three-point at bat. And I turned to him like, what are you talking about? And so I called Coach Murray the next day, and I said, your player just said something really intriguing. Can you walk me through this? So I give all the credit to Coach Murray for creating the system. But basically, it's a way to evaluate run creation on the offensive side of things, and to evaluate run prevention on the pitching side of things. So I think, baseball is a terrible sport, right? Where the historical statistics like batting average and ERA don't necessarily tell you if that player gives you the best chance to create runs, right? So if you believe in the Moneyball philosophy that the goal is to score more runs than your opponent, and that's what wins games, this system has allowed us to determine what that looks like from an objective standpoint. So we, on the offensive side of things, we never keep track of hits. We only keep track of 7 different categories, which Coach Murray and then through our trial and error have determined gives us the best chance to create runs. And so, we keep track of offensively things like getting 3 pitches after 2 strikes. So, for an example, at the Division III level, most of college baseball, the goal is to get into the bullpen as quickly as you can, right? The best pitchers are the starters. So if you can make the starter work and you can foul pitches off and make that person, throw more pitches, if every guy did that over the course of the game, the starter comes out of the game faster, and the player that's hitting should get credit for doing that. So the first category we keep track of is if you get 3 pitches after 2 strikes. And then other categories within the 7 things that we keep track of on the offensive side are reaching base in any particular way. So that can reach on air, obviously getting a base hit, hitting the ball hard, so just being consistent in quality contact, execution of base runners if they're on, being a good base runner, scoring runs. Anyways, those 7 categories, we figured out the more points that we create per game equals more runs. And so I have an Excel sheet that basically says if we reach this point value in a particular game, we're likely to score 7 to 9 runs in that particular game. And so it just allows me over the course of the game to have a better feel for what's going on and, hey, are we in this game or not? And then it gives the players a sense in the evaluation process. They're being equitably evaluated so that they know exactly where they stand. And we make it transparent. So we keep a sheet or a chart every single time there's a scrimmage, and then we put that sheet in the clubhouse for everybody to see. And when it comes time for me to pick or write a lineup card, when it comes to, hey, who's the best guy at third base, for example, the offensive production is the majority of that decision, right? And so obviously when it comes to lineup, they have to be able to play defense. So we of course are teaching those things and evaluating that accordingly. But to Billy Bean's point, Scott Hatterberg did not have to be good at first base in order to play there, right? You just have to score more runs than your opponent. So we do something similar on the pitching side, which I think also helps for the players, because I think coaches get enamored by velocity, they get enamored by spin rate, they get enamored by ERA, or things that don't necessarily mean the pitcher is being very successful. And so we've done something similar on the pitching side, which kind of creates a level playing field for those guys. And the same thing applies. When we pitch at a certain level, we're likely to give up these amount of runs. And so you just want to be on the plus side of that equation every day. And over the last 7 or 8 years we've been doing it, we've had significantly more success as a program, because of the system, the buy-in from the players. And what it really does is that it allows there to be cohesion amongst the team. And so early on in my career, I was really bad at having a system of evaluation and really bad at communicating with guys about their roles, and guys didn't appreciate or didn't understand or didn't like that position. And so, they didn't like playing for me or in our program. But now, when a guy is not in the lineup, it's plain and simple. Hey, I didn't play well enough, or a person played better than me, and I recognize that, and I'm just going to continue to work at it. And they're satisfied with, even though they're not playing, they're still pulling for the guys that are on the field and playing. And once again, it's been a huge part of our success. And I give all the credit to Coach Murray and all his experience and background in doing and creating it.
This is I've never heard of anything like this. This is awesome. So let's talk about the offensive side for a minute. Well, pitching too, I guess. But you have different point values. So that one player said it was a 3-point at bat. So is that because 3 different things happened, or is that because there's more value? Like you place more value on things like extra base hits or whatever it may be than a single, for example. And then are there also negative values? Are you only keeping track of positives, and whoever has the most positives has a better score? Are you also keeping track of negatives, like a strikeout is more useless or a bigger negative than a flyout or something along that line? Do you have different point values? Like are there 1, 2, 3, 4 point at bats or results or whatever an offensive player can do, and are there negatives as well?
So we don't keep track of negatives. I think there's enough negativity in the game. So if somebody was to, like strike out on 3 pitches, that would just be a 0 point at bat. But yes, there are different values, and they get credit for the entirety of their time on offense. So if they were to foul pitches off and reach base, and then maybe steal second and then score, they get credit for all of those components. So you can have a multiple point at bat based on all the things that happen while you're still on offense. And we credit things differently based on no outs or 2 outs. So a 2-out RBI is 2 points compared to a 0 or 1-out RBI is only 1 point because the game is valued in 2-out RBIs, right? So there's just different values based on maybe the situation that we're in. And so guys can get multiple points in one particular bat. I've seen as high as like 15 or 16 points in one at bat where somebody fouled off a bunch of pitches and they hit like a two-out grand slam. Where they had all those RBIs at 2 outs and then they themselves scored. So it's a pretty fun experience. The players really enjoy it. It gives the pitchers, the charters something to be involved with. And once again, it just really objectifies, the player evaluation. And then it really helps to simplify a lot of those conversations in terms of what people's roles are going to be.
So then at the end of the fall, when you're kind of figuring out what the spring is going to look like, are you going by like total points? Are you going by basically the points per at bat on average? How do you sort of quote unquote batting average? How are you determining based on the point system throughout the fall, like what happens in the spring?
Yeah, so it's points per at bat for the hitters, and it's points per batters faced on the pitching side of things. What we try and do is just equitably give those guys opportunities. So when we're scrimmaging or inter-squatting, we just run through the lineup straight through, and so everyone gets the same number of bats, same number of outings. It's obviously predicated on the people around you, right? So you scoring runs, you need some help behind you, and to get RBIs and to advance runners, you need guys in front of you. But my feeling is that kind of evens itself out over the course of a 35, 40, 45 at-bat fall. And so, yeah, the information at the end of the fall helps to determine where somebody would fit on that particular day. And so we give, obviously, the players an understanding of what their role would be as fall practice finishes, and then we use our winter training in the couple of weeks of scrimmaging when we come back to add to that equation. So it gives the player a window of time to improve their skill set, especially in the things that we've identified as things they should get better at. And then, it gives them an opportunity to get better and maybe change their role over the course of those few months.
This is so interesting. On the pitching side of things, what can a pitcher score points by doing on the pitching side?
Yeah, so it's 10 categories on the pitching side. First pitch strike, a batter is half as likely to reach base if they start 0-1. Secondary pitches for strikes, so any off-speed pitches for strikes. Other things include like fielding your position, no free base inning. We want to attack guys in 4 pitches or less. So every time they accomplish that, they get a point. Limiting damage. So if there's stranded runners or a 1-2-3 inning, so there's 10 different categories, and it really helps. I would say it's more noticeable on the pitching side because you could be pitching, give up 3 lineouts, right, and they're all caught, and you go back to the dugout and you think you had a good inning, but if you're watching the game, it's like, man, that guy just got tattooed. And so it's helped to really make sure the guys are understanding that competing in the strike zone is prominent, and making sure that they practice the secondary stuff and can disrupt timing. And you can do so if you're 80 miles an hour or you're 90 miles an hour. The velocity is not part of the equation, right? You can be a quality pitcher in both of those spectrums. So we've had, Jamie Moyer on our staff. We've had somebody that's had a lot of success being, 78 to 82 left-handed, throw secondary pitches, just, spins the ball a little bit. And we've had guys that had success that are 88 to 92. So it eliminates velocity as the equation for who's going to give you the best chance to prevent runs.
I really, really like this. Does this stuff, does it change from year to year, or when you get a new assistant in, or from time to time, do you as a staff, do you sort of reevaluate what you feel like is more valuable than other things, as far as which ones, which of these things is going to be worth 1 point, which is going to be worth 2, which might be worth 3? Do you evaluate that from time to time, sort of as your philosophy, maybe as the game changes a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we're always self-assessing what we're doing and how we're doing it. Getting feedback from the players, I think, is really important. Talking with other coaches, my coaching friends about things that they're doing in their programs. We've had some tinkering to the charts specifically. But for the most part, it's staying consistent. I think that the work that Coach Murray did before he gave it to me, and then the things that we've done over 8 years of using it, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak, where you just focus on the process, right, and focus on the things that you can control, and objectively evaluate those things. And at the end of the day, it doesn't guarantee a victory, but when we accomplish both our goals, so our pitching goal and our hitting goal in the same game, our winning percentage is 970. So it really takes a lot of my decision making out of the equation. Just, hey, objectively throw strikes, command the strike zone. Don't create big innings by compounding things, and offensively hit the ball hard and make the pitcher work. When you do both those things in the same game, you should win, right? It doesn't guarantee a win, but you should win. So it really helps for the players to buy in, like, hey, this is our formula for success, and just go out and execute those opportunities when you get them.
I think that's really cool. I've never heard of anything like that. I think that's great. I know that a lot of coaches use the quality of bat average. That's only for hitters, obviously, but they do the same thing to try to be more objective and to show players this is why so-and-so is playing and this is why you're not. His quality of bat average is this and that, but there's a lot of subjectivity in the quality of bat average, and your system seems to even take that out of the equation, which is, I think it's really, really cool.
I remember being at the ABCA the first couple of years I was a head coach and hearing about, the quality bat system. So we had used that before, and I think it's a great system. But at the end of the day, it's all based on what's important to you. So how you define quality bats helps to create that subjectivity like you talked about. So the point system really allows the guys that are good base runners that anticipate the balls in dirt and can be a pest offensively and foul pitches off. It rewards those guys who really don't necessarily get in a regular quality of bat chart, or if you're like exit velocity or extra base hits, those guys don't necessarily get rewarded in the same way. And so it helps to kind of level the playing field for those guys.
Who keeps track of this stuff for you, Coach?
Well, we teach the pitchers who are obviously charting. We teach those guys how, the system that we use and how to do it. And then I'm keeping charts throughout games and scrimmages, and so I always go back and kind of double check, what's being inputs, just to make sure that there's consistency there. And then I do all the data input. So I have an Excel sheet that we've used, during this time, and I put in the numbers, and then I print it off. And from time to time, there's discrepancies or guys have questions, and I mess up, of course, all the time, and so it just allows the players every week when they come to the field, hey, where do I fit? How did my weekend go? What were some things I got to get better at? And then, how do we create a development plan that helps those guys improve over the course of those days?
Really, really cool. I want to kind of jump to something else that you touched on briefly earlier, but I think is important to get into, is just the facilities that you have. I think another maybe misnomer about Division III is that you're basically going to be playing on a high school field. I know that that you guys in 2019, you at Willamette had installed a turf mound, turf plate, turf baselines, bullpens. You previously you've updated your clubhouse, so I think people might not realize that Division III is not all programs, but some have a clubhouse. You have a covered batting facility with batting cages. I believe I read that you have a strength and conditioning room for your baseball team. Can you just talk about the facilities a little bit? Because I think that will shock a lot of people too, just as far as getting a more well-rounded picture of what Division III baseball is actually like.
Yeah, I would say, to each their own, right? So each school, has their own set of facilities. Our conference as a whole, in my 15 years here, almost all of the programs have updated and capacity. There's artificial surfaces throughout the conference. We are just very blessed where a long time ago, a guy by the name of Bill Trenbeth, who was the baseball coach here for a long time and the athletic director, did a bunch of fundraising and built a 1,500-seat stadium that sits above the field. And so it's a beautiful landscape. Our facility is off campus in the middle of a park, in the city park. And so there's just trees all around the park. Like I said, the stadium is raised, so it's just a great avenue for the fans. We do have a clubhouse that's right behind the dugout. It's literally like you could be in your locker, and then you step through the door and you're right in the dugout. So we're one of a few schools that have access, directly to the clubhouse. And that's kind of our second home, right? The players spend a lot of time there. We've got, TVs and Wi-Fi, and when you talk about building that sense of family and community, it's because they spend a lot of time together, and we're just very lucky that we have a facility to do so. Our cages are covered with lights, so it allows the players to kind of hit anytime they want to. So kind of build off my point earlier where, culturally you want guys that, want to get after it and work on their own. And then, on the visiting side or on the first base side, we've created kind of a strength and conditioning room or a pitcher's recovery room, we call it. And so, what came from my Tommy John experience has turned into a pretty extensive, pitcher's recovery program with, so that room is equipped with, training tables and free weights and medicine balls and bands and pulley machines, which really allow the pitchers to kind of maximize their recovery on site. And we do the workouts as soon as they're done throwing. So once again, very blessed with the things at the baseball facility. And then Willamette as a campus has two turf athletic fields, soccer and football. We've got an indoor field house that we throw bullpens in to have indoor cages in, and we have a fairly renovated 10,000 square foot fitness center. So when it comes to facilities, we feel very lucky. Our guys really maximize their development and enjoy the time that they're in those places because of how great they are.
And I think, again, that's something that will surprise people listening to this. And there are Division III programs out there that either play at a community field. I mean, there are schools at several levels that play at community fields, not just Division III, but there are some Division III programs that do play at what would be more standard high school fields. But there are Division III facilities out there that offer a lot. And I know that we're in the age now where kids, they want gear and they want to be somewhere where the facilities are good, but you can't roll out a school based on the level and just say, well, they mustn't have good facilities because they're Division III. There are a lot of good Division III programs that have a lot of really good facilities. There's one near me, actually. There's a Division III not far from me that does play at basically at a field where the playing surface is nice, but there aren't the hitting facilities. There's not a clubhouse. There's not any of that stuff. The playing surface is good, but that's about all they've got. There's another one that's about 45 minutes from me that has a beautiful stadium, and it's a community field, but it's turf. The college gets full access to it during the whole season, and it probably seats about 1,000 people. It's great. They started using it this year for a summer collegiate league. It's a great place. It's a Division III program around here, so it really just depends program to program, but you guys have a great setup there. Are kids surprised when they come on campus and see everything that Willamette has to offer? Like, especially someone you recruit from out of the area, when you actually get them on campus, are they surprised by all the amenities?
Yeah, I would say shocked is probably a better word. It's just not, we send pictures or videos to kind of give them an idea of what it looks like, but until you actually step on campus, we have a beautiful campus. We are downtown Salem, but the middle of our campus, there's a river that goes through campus. There's trees everywhere. There's birds and wildlife, and so you never feel like you're in the middle of a major city. While at the same time, just having picturesque buildings and the space, and then the facility, I think is certainly a wow factor. I don't want to say that we are the best, but I've seen lots of different college baseball facilities, throughout the region or at various levels, and I just feel very blessed that, we have what we have, and the players really enjoy the time that they're there, and they don't ever sacrifice their development because of the space that we have or any of the restrictions that it presents us.
Very, very cool. Coach Swick, as one last question for you, what do you think, what does the future look like for you and for Willamette baseball? If you had to, look out 5-10 years from now, what do you think the future is? What are some goals that you've got for the future of that program and for yourself going forward?
Yeah, I think, the first thing is just to continue to, provide an environment that allows our players to maximize their experience, and then, produces quality young men. The goal, obviously, of playing college baseball is to do the sport that you love. My profession, or my goal here is just to help those guys transition from young man to manhood into their adult life. So, my goal is just to continue to provide a quality environment where those guys get to do so. In terms of stuff that's on the field, 2018 was a great year. We actually lost in the regional final to the team that lost in the national championship game. So, we, as a program, have gotten fairly close to being on the national scale. I don't think we're there yet, but I think that's the next step is to, win a conference championship, play in a regional, and present ourselves as a formidable program at the national level. And then, once you get to that point, sustaining that is obviously the challenging piece. And so, we've been very successful in terms of wins and losses. We played in back-to-back conference tournament games or conference tournament championship games. But, to get to the next level, you have to create a special group. And so that's the thing that I'm just most excited about. We didn't lose too many guys to graduation. We have a very talented recruit class coming in. We've been working hard for the 21 class and have some quality commits so far. And so I think the future is we can get to all those things. I think we can win a conference title. We can get to the national scale. While also at the same time just producing, 100% graduation rate and producing quality people, off the field. That's the goal, to do both those things simultaneously.
If you had to put your finger on a couple things, and you probably have, you seem like someone that does a good bit of self-evaluating and kind of evaluating the team and personnel. If there are a couple things that you could point to and you could say, if over the next 5 years we become better and more consistent at this or this or this, I think we'll be there. Are there a couple things that you have sort of pinpointed in your program that you'd like to really focus on that you think can get you to where you want to be?
Yeah, I think in terms of the self-assessment, you just want to make sure that as you're going through the recruiting process, you're maximizing what you feel like those players' ceilings are, right? And so, my assistant coach, Mikey Nance, and my other assistant, Connor Bailey, do fantastic jobs of having dialogue with the players, getting some feedback from them, and let's make sure we incorporate drills and put them in situations to have success. So I think the biggest thing from the COVID piece was just, all of the professional development that's happened in our industry and the sharing of information. And so just feel very lucky that now we can apply it to our program, but that stuff has to be things that the players understand and that benefits them. Ultimately, the game comes down to pitching and defense, and so we've been a program rich in offensive history where we're very offensive and we can do things there. To get to the next level, we have to pitch better and we have to play defense at a high level. And so, if we can combine that with what we will do offensively, I believe, over the next few years, I think we can get there.
This has been great. This is Aaron Swick, everybody. He's the head coach at Willamette University, a Division III school in Salem, Oregon. Coach Swick, this has been great, man. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you. We didn't know each other at all before this call today, but got to spend a good bit of time before we started recording and then and during this, and it's been great. I really appreciate it, and I think people that are listening to this learned a lot about the level itself, Division III, and some great things that you can offer at that level, and just a lot about you and the university there. So I appreciate your time that you spent with us today and everything you shared with us.
Jeff, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share things about Willamette, our program, and the things we do here.